Hello and welcome to Peggy's Plants, coming to you from the Florida Keys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you and yours are well. Today I'd like to share with you this Anthurium Luxurians that I received as a gift from an Indonesian seller. I received it through the mail, and when it arrived, it was dead. I mean, no signs of life at all. It was a little stump with dead leaves, and it looked like all dead roots. So I didn't know if this plant would ever grow. I decided to cut all the leaves off, stuck it in some leca, and this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it's successfully growing, but I was looking at it and I noticed a little teeny leaf at the very bottom of the roots in the leca. I mean, it was so far down in the leca that it had no chance of this leaf ever making it to the surface, meaning that eventually the little sprout would die off. Therefore, I decided to go on and take a cutting and remove the little part that was growing under the leca. And this is it. As you can see, it's barely larger than a paper clip. Ideally, if this was growing closer to the surface, I would have definitely left it connected to the mother plant and given it more time to develop. But given where it was, I knew that it would die off and never make it to the surface, so I decided to go ahead and remove it and give it a shot at propagating. This is the mother plant after I've taken the cutting. It seems to be doing fairly well. It's growing very slow. I guess that's typical for this plant, but I don't know. However, I do want a backup plant, so I decided to take another cutting. So I'm checking out the roots and checking out the growth to see if there's somewhere that I can reasonably get a good cutting that will be viable. And look what I see, guys. Look at that. There's a growth, some leaves with 2 roots coming off of it. It looks to me like this would be a great place to take a cutting. I've been through a lot with this plant, and I just really want to have a backup just in case things don't work out. So I'm going to go for it. If you look here, this is where I think I should take the cutting. It doesn't seem to be connected to the mother plant by much, so it almost seems like I should be able to just pull it off. But I don't want to just do that and cause damage. If I just pull this little section off by hand, I may break the stem, I may break the roots, I may cause some damage to the mother plant. So I don't necessarily want to do that. But it's really, really loose. If you look here, it seems like it would be easy just to pull apart. But it definitely seems like a good place to take a cutting. So now I'm just trying to determine exactly where it is connected to the mother plant so I can see how I can get to it. So once I can find that little area, I'll be able to just cut it. So I'm going to take a sharp knife and just carefully cut the part that is connecting this growth to the mother plant. I was looking for my little X-Acto knife and I couldn't find it, so I ended up using this box cutter, but I'm just making little tiny cuts around it. I need to be careful not to cut any of the surrounding roots and not to make the incision any larger than necessary, because that will be a place where bacteria can be introduced. I want to take my time, and it's so tempting just to snap it, but I don't want to cause any damage. So I'm going to get in here one more time and just try to, there it goes, easy enough. I didn't do any damage to any other parts of the plant, so this should be fine. And I'm just giving it a once over to make sure I don't see any issues with the plants. No rotting, disease, anything like that. So whenever I have access to a plant, I have it out of its soil or whatever, I like to check it out. And here's what the cutting looks like. The roots and everything nicely intact. I did put some cinnamon on the mother plant in both places where I took cuttings, and that stops, helps to fight bacteria and things like that, and make it so that it dries out a little faster in those areas to prevent rot. So mother plant looks good. Cutting looks good. It's time to get everything potted up. Please forgive the lighting in this video. Like I said, I wasn't planning to record, so anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the large cutting in some Leca. I like rooting my plants in Leca. A lot of people don't do that, but I do because I find that I have a good success rate with it, and I've never had a plant rot that I have rooted in Leca. I find Leca very easy to work with. I will post a link to my video that gives you a total explanation of how I do things in Leca. Anyway, I got this in the Leca and decided to go ahead, pop it in the grow tent, and let it do its thing. In here it'll get plenty of light. It's nice and warm, and it should do well. As for the little cutting that I took from the Luxurians, I just popped it in here. This is a decursiva that I have rooting in Leca, so I decided to pop that in here too. With the lid on it, it should stay nice and humid. It's in the grow tent, so it should be warm. So this should get everything it needs. Here's the mother plant. The areas that were cut have already dried, so they're kind of calloused over, if you will. And I'm going to put this back in the Leca that I had it in originally, but since I've already disturbed this plant, I'll take this opportunity to go ahead and flush the Leca to get any mineral deposits and things like that out of the Leca. Again, check out my Leca video. I totally explain all of the things I do with Leca and why. Okay, once I get these Leca pellets well rinsed, I'll go ahead and pot the mother plant back into this Leca. And here is the Luxurians mother plant now that it has been repotted in the Leca pellets. So let's get to some updates and see how things went with this plant. I've had all the Luxurian cuttings and mother plant in the grow tent for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, this is how the cutting looks. I'm a little concerned about the leaves. The plant's a little droopy and floppy. So I think what it is I'm not able to keep it wet enough. So I'm going to repot this, and I think I'm going to put it in Perlite. And that way the small roots will be able to stay a little wetter, which is what I think this needs. So that's what I'm going to do there. Here's a growth check on the roots. And as you can see, it has grown a little bit. The roots have. So I'm happy about that. But I'm just thinking they might do a little better in Perlite, and the plant will be a little more stable. So I did exactly that. I went on, repotted it in Perlite. Here it is. This is after 1 week in Perlite. So it was still a little droopy, but things quickly changed. And after 2 weeks, this is how it looked. Look at the leaves. The leaves are nice and firm. They're no longer droopy. This plant really took off. And then at 3 weeks, the roots had gone into full effect. Remember, this had the 2 little roots, and now look at it. I mean, the cup has roots all going through it and everything. So it really responded well to the additional moisture. The Leca, I think the spacing was just too wide, so too much air and things like that. And I mean, just really look at these roots all around the bottom of the container now and everything. And the green is just algae, and that's because, you know, when the light is able to get in there with the water and stuff, it causes algae. No problem to the plant at all. But looking really good, so I'm very pleased with how this plant is turning out. And we're kind of close to 4 weeks, but look at this. Another leaf has unfurled. So I'm very happy with this. I mean, if you know anything about Luxurians, you know they're very hard to get your hands on. They're pretty pricey. So having a backup one means everything. And here's a look at the mother plant after 2 weeks. Again, this was also in the grow tent. It's in Leca. I don't see any additional roots, at least that are visible at this time, from the outside of the jar, but the leaves are looking pretty happy. They're not drooping or anything like that. They're nice and firm. So the mother plant is very happy. After 3 weeks, this is what it looks like. And yeah, it looks like things are more upright. This plant seems to be doing very well. And I can't see any root growth, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that I'm not seeing it on the outside of the jar yet. But the root looks healthy. I don't see any signs that there may be any rot or anything like that. So very happy with this. And here's a look after 4 weeks. The stems are a little longer, and I am beginning to start seeing signs of growth points. The nodes from the little stump are starting to develop in some areas. So it looks like I'm going to be getting some new growth very shortly. So I'm happy about that. Let me see if I can really get in here so that you can see what I'm talking about in terms of the new growth. If you look really, really closely, there's a little area where you can see some growth. And as far as the little cutting that got all of this started, here is what it is looking like now. It's hanging in there. I don't know whether or not this is going to make it. I'm sure I'm going to do everything that I can to see that it does, hopefully. And that's about it for this Anthurium Luxurians propagation. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay well, take care, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.